humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 386, and I had a conversation with Nick Buda. Nick is a producer and drummer in Nashville, Tennessee. He was born in South Africa, but came to the U.S. as a kid. He tours with Kenny Chesney and has worked with dozens and dozens of artists, including megastars Taylor Swift, Dolly Parton, Lionel Richie, and Martina McBride. But so many more. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on. We talked about his childhood, his career, family, his connection to the creator of Marvel's Thanos, and so much more. Nick and I have been friends for a really long time, and I'm so happy we finally were able to be in the same place at the same time. We connected at a gig in Denver and met up at the hotel, and we recorded this on an iPhone. Shout out iPhone. Here's hoping the Swifties will hear this episode and share it far and wide. In other news, I am playing this Saturday in Santa Monica, California. If anybody is in the vicinity of that, I will be playing The Crow, 8 p.m. I have an opening set for the comedy show that night. So that'll be a lot of fun, dusting off the guitar and doing a little live set. Come on down if you want to at The Crow. It's in Bergamont Station. All right, check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism and Hey Human Podcast on social media. Find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your music. My last record is All I Ever Wanted Was Everything. You can find it everywhere. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Nick Buda, welcome to Hey Human.
All right. Happy to be a part of Hey Human.
This is cool. We've talked about this for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here you are. Here I am.
Yeah.
On the road again.
I like that we're doing it in person.
Yeah, that is good.
There's been a lot of Zoom type interviews, and it works too, but it's nice in person.
Do you get interviewed a lot?
I mean, not a lot, but it happens. It happens. Yeah. Mostly music stuff, though. Different types of either drummer or obviously music related, but mostly drummer focused podcasts, which... That's that thing. I'm psyched to be doing one that's not as particularly focused on drums, more human. That's right.
Although we will cover drums.
Yeah, sure.
We'll get a beat on that. See what I did there?
Yeah.
That's like a good drum pun. Let's go back to the beginning. Where are you from?
I was born in Cape Town in South Africa and lived there till I was 12 and a half or so.
And how was life growing up in South Africa?
In the time, without... me knowing anymore, it was great. We had a beautiful place on the side of a mountain. Cape Town's absolutely beautiful. So, but the views over the ocean were obviously taken for granted because that's all I ever knew. I was zipping down to the beach and playing with the dogs on the sand, and not just like the beach, but some of the most beautiful beaches. I mean, just incredible. My grandmother lived on the other side of the mountain, so my mom was in the sort of fashion design world. She was a buyer for a let's say, a Gap style clothing store in South Africa. And so my grandmother would pick me up from school, and I'd go and hang with her for the afternoons. We'd play cards. We'd have tea time at 4 o'clock, all the stuff. And then my mom would pick me up at 5 or 5:30, and we'd go around to the other side of the mountain to where we lived.
Do you have siblings?
No.
Okay, only child.
Yeah.
What, was apartheid still a big deal around you?
Apartheid was very much a big deal, yeah. I didn't know so much about it as a kid. My mom is still very political, but at the time I was very anti everything that was going on over there. The oppression of the black and colored community in a country where they were by far the majority was terrible and disgusting, and it was ultimately the reason why we left. But as a kid, I wasn't so aware of that. It's not like I don't know that I was necessarily around a lot of black or mixed scenarios, so to say, but it wasn't something. I didn't find it unusual either. I think a lot of I don't know about all that, but I do know that there were days that we would not go to school. Like, school would be closed because it was, and I would just be happy school was closed, but it was because it would be like, let's say, the anniversary of a black leader that had been killed, and they were concerned about marches and potential violence and things like that. So they would just not have school that day.
Was school segregated?
Some schools were definitely segregated. The school I went to wasn't particularly, I went to a Jewish school, I'm Jewish. So I went to a Jewish school growing up in Cape Town. So there just weren't a lot of black people there. But but it wasn't.
I think I've known like 3 Jewish black people.
That's right. That's right. And in South Africa, they probably were there. Yeah. There wasn't like a strong divide segregation there, but there was a most definite economic segregation where, black kids weren't allowed to go to school a lot of times. They were, or they were put in a position where they weren't able to. Yeah, apartheid was a terrible thing, And so once the biggest sanctions started coming down in South Africa because of apartheid from America and the rest of the world, the future was bleak for South Africa. There were a lot of big international companies that were pulling out and all that sort of stuff. And
took them long enough.
It took them long enough. No, it's exactly right. It took a pressure, like the big pressure of everything before any one company actually bailed on it. You know what I mean? And at that time, everybody was leaving. And they were either going to Australia or England, which were a lot of times the easier places to move. As far as, being able to take your stuff and actually be, like, the United States, A, is very far, and B, everything's 110 volt here as opposed to 220. So, like, you were literally packing a bag and then starting again. And most people...
Oh, that's weird. I wouldn't think about that. Yeah. Electricity is completely
You're not moving your house. You're literally, like, furniture maybe, but that's about it, So...
and that's just not worthwhile. You just get new stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, we actually ended up doing that. We shipped our stuff over here when we moved, couches and tables and stuff. But even then, not very much. We sold off a lot of it. Because when we moved, everybody was trying to move. Most people were so sort of tied to a certain lifestyle that they had in South Africa. Of course, you had nannies, help around, that were mostly black because the wages were so inexpensive. Like, I mean, anybody could afford that. And so, these families were all of a sudden moving to, like, let's say England. That help was now a lot more expensive, as it should be. And a lot of families just felt like, well, that's not worth it. I'll deal with apartheid and kind of turn the other cheek because I like having my
lifestyle
laundry done for me and my lifestyle, whatever.
I mean, I think that's true of a lot of oppressive situations, right? Is that folks think, oh, okay, well, it's not really happening to me, it's happening around me, and I'm benefiting, even if I don't believe these things, I'm benefiting from other people's oppression, so I'm going to stick around.
And I don't know, I think that there's those views as well as views of like, well, I don't like the fact that this country that I love seems to be going over a cliff, so I'm going to get out now. But then there's but it's really beautiful here, and maybe I can just make it work. And literally, like most of the people I knew that had tried to leave around then, within a year, 6 months to a year, they were back again because it was just easier to be back.
And also, change comes from within.
Yeah,
as well.
Completely.
So if everybody who wants things to be better and to do better leave, who's left to do better and be better? Yeah,
well, there was that. I don't know, and now, granted, I was too young at the time to really have a bigger concept about what was going on, but from what I have learned and looking back at it, it feels like there were those that said, I will not stand for this. This is not the country that I want to live in or the environment that I want to be in. My mom was one of those. It was a struggle to come to the States and change our lifestyle 1,000%, But my mom was so, she believed so strongly in what we were doing that that we were not going to be going back. There was just, whatever happened, we weren't coming back,
Yeah.
And I wish I could commend, there's not enough to commend her on that because I know how, again, I didn't necessarily understand at the time because she hid a lot of it from me. I was, that was when I was like 13, 14, those early years, whatever, teenage years. And I was pissed at a lot of the things I didn't get to do, but not aware of why necessarily I couldn't. And also not aware of how difficult moving to a new place so far away from anything, not
everyone.
Yeah, and everyone. And the way that we moved to at the time, in order to get a green card, that was like a 6-7 year process, and it's even, I think it's even worse now, but in those days, and my mom was not prepared to sit around and wait. And if I had turned 18 in that era, if I had turned 18 in South Africa, I would have had to join the army, and she was not going to have that.
Oh, I didn't know that South Africa is a required.
It did then. I don't think it does anymore.
A lot of countries do.
Yeah, for sure. So we just took off.
Did your grandmother go as well?
No, my grandmother stayed in Cape Town. She had, obviously, my mom's younger brother was still there, and other family cousins stuff was still there. And I think she felt, too, that, like, she also very much disagreed with what was going on, but she was involved sort of in the, not in the fight, but like in sort of like projects. She was a part of this group that raised money for schools for black kids. And so she was sort of a part of that, and her life was there. And yeah, she wasn't going to move.
She's much older.
Yeah, and my dad actually, my mom and dad split up when I was a very little kid, and so my dad also stayed. His life was there. I mean, his business was a lot more more international dealings, and Cape Town was more of his base than anything else. But so my dad was still there, my grandmother was still there.
You reference black people and colored people. When you say colored, do you mean people of color, or is that a delineation in South Africa? Is that something South African? Colored
people are when the white people came and got together with, like, however, it wasn't always pleasant, the rape and pillaging scenario.
Never is.
But yeah, exactly. But
are you going to the rape and pillage tonight?
yeah, that's right. I mean, and obviously, and it's funny too. When I was a kid in South Africa, when we learned about history in South Africa, and we learned about Jan van Riebeeck was the guy that founded South Africa. He sailed down from the Netherlands and that's how South Africa was born, and then
completely ignoring the indigenous folks.
Oh, completely! Like that was not a part of our history at all as a kid growing up there, And then when I was in Nashville, once we'd moved, and I was in high school, and my senior year there was an African history option class, and I thought, oh well, my senior year, let me take this because I'm just going to breeze through it because I already know all this stuff. And my mind was blown. Even at 17 or however old I was at that point, I still hadn't gone back. We had moved. Now I'm an American kid in a school here and all this sort of stuff. And I did not understand that there was history that I had not been taught, that had been, omitted from those classes. And it kind of blew my mind. And so that was a big lesson. And I know it happens a lot, but it's like when it happens to you, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe my whole life I thought that this was how it went, and there was a whole area before that, and exactly what happened once. Jan van Riebeeck was not the hero, I mean, and that, which is obviously how it had been taught to me,
Sure. So yeah, American history is no different. That's
no.
Our vibe.
Well, and I mean, you want to go down that road today. I mean, and they're trying to make it even more that, which is despicable. But anyway,
despicable. I agree. How was your Jewishness growing up there? How was that? Were people? Did you get lumped into a particular part of town as well? No, not really. I had friends that were Jewish and not Jewish, but there was a very strong Jewish community in Cape Town, and so I didn't. Again, I'm not a particularly religious person. I love the faith. I love the traditions around the Jewish tradition.
Yeah, it's great, and I was raised very much like that. Yeah. Like we were raised, we would have these big family dinners for over the Jewish holidays, but instead of going through the whole service at home, we'd have my grandmother would sit at the big table, we would all be there, and whatever, and we would have the abridged version, you do this, there's a song here, you do this quick little thing, and amen, and then you go straight to the straight to the food, and there was certain services too, where there was oh God, I'm testing my Jewish knowledge here, but there was service where at the end of the service the kids would get candy, chocolate or something. And my grandmother would take me for the last 15 minutes of the we would sneak in the back of the shul, and so now
that's hilarious.
Now that I have a daughter that just turned 7, I'm I really want to start getting back into that stuff just so that she knows those stories. Yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think it's really great.
I get that. Well, last night I said, oh, it's Yom Kippur. You went, oh, really?
Oh, really? Well, we should toast on that. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah.
Right, well, the thing about being Jewish, right? There's being culturally Jewish, and then there's being religiously Jewish.
Yeah.
And sometimes those two paths cross, and sometimes they don't.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. How was the culture shock of coming to the U.S. aside from realizing you didn't know anything about your own country?
Oh, well, yeah. No, thankfully that didn't all happen at the same time. But yeah, no, it was heavy. You know, we moved in August. My birthday's in March. So I was literally like 12 and a half. And I, you know, when we first found out that we were leaving South Africa, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because we were coming to America. And back then, America was like the land of dreams. Like, you know, all the things you can imagine, like essentially like going to live in Disney World, you know. And it's funny, a year before me, a girl had moved to the States with her parents. I think they moved to Atlanta, and I remember thinking, man, that is just so cool. It would be so amazing. I wonder where Jane Robbie was her name. I'll never forget. So anyway, Jane, if you're listening, give me a call. So the year later we were moving, and I thought it was so cool, and all my friends thought I was so cool, and I was a very shy kid, and I didn't like my best friend when I was at that age was the super cool kid, and I was definitely in the shadows and like did my own thing, whatever. So all of a sudden I was like, wow, it's so cool. Next moving to America. How cool is that? And then like days before we were leaving, I realized, oh wait, I'm leaving everybody I know here and everything I know here. And so it was sort of exciting. And it was the first realizations of, oh, this isn't going to be so easy. And then when we got to the States, it was only weeks before I was going to have to start school, and we had no idea where I was going to school. And so thankfully, we found this great school in Nashville called the University School in Nashville, because my mom had heard nothing but nightmare stories about public schools in the States. And back then, pre-internet, all that we had to go on was movies, right? And we saw these movies where, like, in the high schools, drug deals are happening and all these other things. Mom was like, you're not going to one of those schools, you know? So she found out about this great liberal arts K through 12. And somehow I got in. And thank goodness,
it's a phenomenal school.
It's incredible. Quite famous. Well, and my daughter goes there now.
Yeah, okay.
You know, yeah. And it's I will say thank goodness for that and music, because it was such a great environment. The relationship with the teachers was so great. For me, being still like I was still pretty shy and I had an extremely strong accent. Some people couldn't understand me. A lot of people just wanted me to talk, and I was really shy and didn't know where I fit in or anything like that. It took a year. It took a year of me not being so happy about things and occasionally really hating things to finally feel like I may have a footing or may fit in somewhere, you know? So that was 7th grade, which is, I mean, it's tough grade anyway. For kids that age, it's like you question everything. Like every little thing is the biggest thing it can be,
yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
And I had a hard time. Yeah. But I played music and I met friends doing that. And through 8th grade, had a little band, you know, all those, and that kind of helped me find my people.
Always
in
drums?
That thing. Yeah, always. I've played drums since, but I was hitting on things before I was playing drums. It's just always been in me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What happens after high school?
So, you know, I played all the way through high school and then decided in my senior year of high school, I went to go see Sting. And it's funny because even in my senior book or whatever, the high school book, it says somewhere like a quote from me saying like I met Sting or whatever, which is funny to think about. But I did get to meet him at the show that he was at through a friend of a friend. And in that meeting, I met his drummer at the time, Vinny Colaiuta, who I was a huge fan of. And we talked about Berklee School of Music, and I already knew about that. And I knew that I wanted to keep playing drums, and that was one avenue to be able to do that. And then Vinny was, was a huge influence and was, talking so highly about Berklee. So I was like, okay, well, that's where I'm going. So I took a semester off after high school because we were still not legal. Like we were still living under the radar 100% for the whole time. Yeah.
Oh, so they didn't even know you were really in the country?
They didn't know that, and by they, like the authorities that would care.
They
would not have known because
You were an illegal immigrant.
I was an illegal alien, 100%. Yeah.
And immigrant, I suppose.
Yeah.
You were all the things.
But the thing is, we hadn't really even immigrated yet. Like we were completely just sitting under the radar, waiting for that paperwork to come through so we could get a green card.
Interesting.
And that meant not being able to do certain. Like I love driving, I love cars, and I couldn't wait till I turned 16 to drive. But certain things had to happen before I could get my license, and it wasn't that long. I don't know how they were able to work it out. I don't know all the details, but it was a couple of months that I was like, why is this such, and not even with a big enough scope to be able to understand, hey, there are bigger things at work here. Just be happy that everything's...
Did your mom have a job during that whole time?
She would work little side jobs and stuff for people and getting paid under the table and stuff.
I've interviewed people that don't have green cards that are living in this country, quote unquote, illegally, whatever that means for a human being to be illegal in the country.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but... and they use things like fake Social Security. They still pay taxes. They do all the things that are probably more so because they're trying so desperately not to get caught.
Yeah.
I mean, most of my friends who were born here do everything they can to not pay all their taxes.
To not pay the taxes. That's right. Well, it's funny. I remember us getting Social Security cards, but it said not for hire or can't be, whatever it is. I don't know if that system still exists or how it works.
Knows?
I mean, honestly, after 9/11, everything changed. And if 9/11, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did had it been after 9/11.
It's also incredibly expensive to become a citizen of the United States.
It's very expensive, yeah. And thankfully, so we were able to pay for all that, in South Africa, as opposed to in the States. I mean, we were living on very little amounts of money as a result. My dad had actually helped find a way for us to be able to get some money over beyond just money that you could travel on, because you're not expected, when you come on vacation somewhere, you're not expected to be paying rent and groceries and all that sort of stuff, and we were very limited in what we could do over months and months. So my mom, we were living like refugees, not necessarily actually being refugees, but very much on bare minimums.
Were you on scholarship then at school?
I keep, this is one of those things I keep forgetting to actually find out about. There was some sort of a visa scenario that allowed money to come through to be able to pay for the school. It was that kind of thing. But I'll give, again, credit to my mom. University school every year would ask for that paperwork that they would need to have, and every year my mom would say, "Oh, the lawyers are working on it. I'll get it to you." And as long as I was a good kid, and I didn't give them a lot of reason to have to question, so they just university school not throwing anybody under the bus, but kind of looked the other way. It's been a long time, so yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, and
remember them when the alumni.
That's right. Oh, trust me, I do. Anyway, but yeah, so we were very fortunate to have gotten by as we did, and it came out great on the other side. Yeah. And in fact, it took a long time. Like, we had green cards for a long time, and then finally I applied for citizenship. Just, for whatever reason. And then got it. So, there you go.
After the gap year, you go to Berkeley?
So, I actually just took a semester off because we had to go back to Cape Town to now get green cards. So, because now it was time to have those meetings and blah, blah, blah. So I took a semester, and we were down there for like 2 months or something like that. And did the interview at the embassy, which was a little ridiculous because now I had an American accent. Like, it was obvious we had been in the States, but yeah.
You kind of have an American accent.
Yeah.
When we were hanging out last night, I could hear it as the alcohol went up.
The accent came out. Yeah, that can happen. Yeah. So, and then I went back and I went to Berkeley because I would never have gotten into Berkeley without having a green card, or, at least.
Sure.
Yeah, I started there in January of that next year, and I was there for about 3 years. I kind of went through the summers because right at that time that I went up to Boston, my mom and my aunt, her younger sister, who's a singer-songwriter, moved up to Woodstock, New York. Debbie was going to be going down to the city to do gigs and working with a couple of really big writers up there, big famous artists. And so my mom moved up there with her, and I was in Boston. Yeah.
I hear that the folks that don't graduate from Berkeley are the ones that tend to be the most successful because I
graduated.
Oh, you did?
I actually did. Yeah.
Okay, because I know so many.
I know what you're saying, though. Yeah. It's absolutely right.
They get plucked out.
A lot of times they either get plucked out, or the ones that just end up staying there and graduating maybe don't have the I don't know, the path, the vision, the it's a lot, to do this thing. So, but I happened to be up there, and I was touring with bands around New England, and I was doing a lot of recording stuff at Berklee, like the midnight to 6 film scoring project or whatever in the whatever studio at Berklee. Come out to find my car had been towed. I've got class at 9, 10 or something,
That's a real musician.
That was college life right there. That was Dick Musician college life. Absolutely.
If you haven't had your car towed as a musician, are you really a musician?
Well, and then a particularly musician in Boston, between booting and towing, it's like that's the norm, right? Yeah, and so it just so happened, because I stayed up there through the summers, I was within a semester or two or something of graduating, and I was kind of thinking of doing something else. My mom was like, you're there, you're busy, you're doing all the stuff, just do it, just finish the thing, get the whatever, even if you never use it, you're already in line to be getting it. So I did. Yeah.
What was your first big break?
Boy, I don't know if I can, it's hard to, one of two things. When I was in high school here, I had done a surprise party with my band at the time for this girl whose parents were a guy named Mac Gaden, who co-wrote Everlasting Love and, big songs. Everlasting Love, like super, that and a couple of other, not as big, but still big hits. Mac really liked how I played, and I was in 8th grade. No, what I'm talking about, 10th grade or something like that. So then around my senior year, as I was graduating high school, he hired me to go on the road with him. So I went out with him. I was by far the youngest guy in the band. I was 16, 17 when I first started doing gigs with him, and everybody else was at least more than twice my age, And I got to work with some I found out afterwards, Nashville heavyweights. And at the time, I had no idea. A guy named Tom Rohde, who unfortunately has passed away, but great percussionist, was on the road. And it's a funny story. So I was watching TV one night. This James Taylor concert came on, and there's Tom Rohde in the back playing percussion. I'm like, what? That's the guy that I played with Matt Gaden. I didn't know he played with James Taylor, whom I'm a huge fan of anyway. So that kind of thing happened all the time. And so I actually missed my graduation party because I was doing a gig with Mac at this place called 328 Performance Hall in Nashville, old school joint. It's not there anymore.
I remember that place.
Yeah.
I saw Steve Earle there.
Oh, yeah.
Who played for 9 hours, I think.
Really?
Because he plays a long time when he plays.
Yeah. So that was one break, was getting to do stuff with Mac and those kind of musicians when I was so young and still learning.
I cannot imagine. That's a child, right?
Very
I cannot
much,
imagine how quickly you were forced to grow up in those parameters.
Yeah.
The things you probably saw.
Well, there's so many funny things happen. So the bass player was a guy named Byron House, who's just awesome, and I really love that guy. And he was the guy that told me, we were rehearsing in our house. We were rehearsing with Mac and that band for some of these shows. And we were playing Everlasting Love, and I had no idea that Mac wrote that tune at that point. And so Mac's talking to somebody else in the band, and Byron's right next to me, and I'm like, man, of all the songs that we would cover, why is he doing this one? And Byron's like, because he wrote it. It was talk about a Nashville thing, right?
Thing, sure.
So at 17, I was like, okay, understood that one. And then he also told me a couple of different ways to play, like accent the ride and stuff while we're playing. I was a rock guy in the high school band, all of a sudden I'm playing with these big dudes,
wow.
So there's some neat little lessons from that. I would say that was that break. And I think the next break that kind of got me started in my sort of professional whatever road was getting hired to play with Colonel Bruce Hampton out of Atlanta. And Bruce was...
An actual colonel?
No, he got the name, like some other... I can't remember. Like his life was
like the chicken guy, Colonel
was wrapped in mystery. Yeah, exactly, sort of. And he was and I'd been a huge fan of his when I was in high school playing along with. He had a band called Aquarium Rescue Unit that was amongst players was just the shit.
I feel like I've heard of that band.
They were just killing. All the players were just amazing, and they were based out of Atlanta. And then
Atlanta had some great bands.
Really
Georgia
great
put
players.
out some great music.
Yeah. And so I moved to Atlanta. Like, I got done with college, and about maybe a year later or something like that, a couple years later, I moved to Atlanta and was playing with Colonel Bruce. And that was big because I got to play with so many of my heroes on stage. I mean, because everybody loved Bruce. So he was like the godfather of the sort of jam band hippie scene. So whether it was the guys from the Allman Brothers, or we played with the Little Feat a bunch. And so, like, me and Richie Haywood would do like the double drummer thing. And I grew up playing with Little Feat records and all that stuff. So that was kind of a big deal. And I learned Berkeley was my school, and Bruce was my real life road school. I learned a lot in the 2 or 2.5 years or whatever that I was playing with him.
Did you have a lot of American and I assume UK band influence living in South Africa then? How did you get your music? And what was your first album you bought?
Well, the first album I bought was definitely the first CD. Oh, the first tape I remember was Twisted Sister. Come out and play.
Dee Schneider?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the first CD I remember buying was Living Color. Cult of Personality. Vivid, I guess, was the name of that record. Yeah, in South Africa, we got a lot of American music. I mean, there was a lot of local stuff, too. And I think a lot of local kind of grooves, influences, kind of found their way to me without me even knowing. It's not like I was very aware of African music, like going out to see it necessarily. But I do know that I was very aware of those grooves and stuff when it came to like those kind of influences. Actually, I think it was right after I was out of college, when I was first back in Nashville for a minute before I moved to Atlanta, I played with this black saxophone player named O.J. Ekamode. And he was all African, traditional African, some Cuban African style grooves. So all of a sudden I was like, I think the one white guy in the band. And really, I don't know, I can't even remember how that came together, but I remember all of a sudden here I was in Nashville playing these true African stuff with dancers and the backup singers and the horns and the whole thing. And somehow it was completely natural for me. Like nothing seemed odd about it, so.
What an education.
Yeah, another little weird tidbit of that,
sure.
that it's not like that comes into play very often, but it was there, it was cool. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so the Bruce thing lasted about 2.5 years, and then it was band dynamics that I was ready to leave. And I came back to Nashville because that was the biggest crossroads, I think, LA or Nashville. And I knew some people in LA, but I really had better friends in Nashville that had moved up the ladder while I'd been gone. And I thought this is a better place for me to find the next step. And within about a month of moving back, a guy that I had met through a guy that I played with in high school was the band leader for an artist named Cindy Thompson, who at the time had just had a big #1, and she was like a young pop country phenom. And so I played with Cindy for a year or so and loved it. I mean, I came straight from being in the jam band scene with Colonel Bruce, moving back to Nashville, and all of a sudden I'm on this pop country gig, playing with loops, doing all, which I'd never done before, opening up for Alan Jackson and blah, 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 all these other people. And Cindy was awesome, and the band was great, and the playing was, I got to use like a lot of my sort of James Taylor style things that I really loved in that gig. And I also thankfully was good friends with some of those folks. So a guy named Bruce Wallace, who had Bruce, right? Who was Cindy's band leader.
Talk about a talent.
It's incredible.
I've written with him. I think he's such a talent.
Yeah. Such a smooth acoustic player. Smoothest acoustic player I know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he, but thankfully he was super cool and loved the fact that I had never listened to country before and playing on this country gig, and also loved the fact that I would go for it all the time, but also was cool enough to be able to say, hey, maybe we pull it back a little bit after, because I was young and ready to go, and I'd just come off the jam band scene where anything was viable,
Sure.
So the Cindy gig was great, and I was sad that when it ended. And then I kind of did some touring in the country scene, met Mindy Smith through the local thing around Nashville, who's just such a phenomenal sort of folky Americana, but even more than that kind of, like, great singer-songwriter. Toured with her, played on some of her records. And that kind of started the, like, okay, I really want to just play on records. I mean, at that point in Nashville, there was a much thicker line between guys that were on the road and guys that recorded.
It's a different vibe.
It is a different thing. I mean, a lot of times the road guys would get pissed they weren't playing on the records, but they'd never really spent time in the studio. And there's a way to play in the studio and a way to play live. And
totally different
until
things.
You can understand the difference, you can't just be expected to come in and make a recording sound good, even if you're killing it on stage, So I spent time trying to get into the recording thing, at the cost of gigs. I mean, gigs would come up and it would be like, I'm going to stay here and not make any money right now instead of going out and making whatever on the road.
That's a tough call.
It was a tough call. But I knew I wanted to do both. And I knew that I would never get to be doing the recording side if I kept touring, But if I got the recording thing going, I could still tour, And that's sort of where I've ended up,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How many records do you think you've played on?
I have no, honestly.
Let's call your union rep.
Yeah. Surely there's a way we can find this out. Yeah.
A lot.
I've played on a lot, yeah. And some of them have been heard by 15 people. And some of them are heard by a lot more. It's just
sometimes the ones that are heard by 15 people are better than
They can be. There are some. I have recorded some great records that I listen to that are on Spotify that I listen to that I know have not. I don't know how many people have heard them, but they were not anything big. They didn't have a single that dropped or whatever, but the record was still great. But then, thankfully, I will say the records that are the biggest records I've played on, I think, are also actually cool records. There is nothing that's out there and big that I can say that I'm embarrassed that I played on, which is I think is fortunate.
Yeah. My name is Big Nuda.
That's right. Change up some letters. No, that's not me. I know, it's weird. Yeah.
Did you decide? Do you have a child?
I have two.
Oh, you have two kids.
Yeah, I've got a 7-year-old girl, Addie, and a 2-year-old boy, Oliver.
Well, look at you. You've been busy.
Yeah.
I didn't know about.
I don't even know how that happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
I'll show you a chart later.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll explain everything.
Different interview, maybe. Yeah.
I'll explain everything.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's get off of music for a second.
Yeah, sure.
How's fatherhood?
It's so much more involved than I thought it would be, in a great way, though. When people say it's the hardest and most awesome thing, that whole thing, and you're like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever. Somehow, when you're in it, it actually is. because you don't always have the answers, and the answers are important. So you're sitting there like, well, I know that I shouldn't have said this thing, but I also need to make sure that this point gets across, but I don't, there's all these, there's all these ways of having to go around communicating with a 7-year-old brain, which is still figuring itself out and still kind of how, it's all important, and yet some of it is taken with a grain of salt, so it's awesome though. I really love it. And obviously Ollie being just 2 he's sweet and cute, but as he comes up, it'll be interesting to see how I don't know, just how it all works. I love that Addie has been able to come to some gigs here and there. She actually has been in the studio a couple times, but obviously for just brief amounts of time. My partner Ashley is amazing at being able to cover all that ground when I'm, because, session time is sort of a non-negotiable. I can't be like, I know it starts at 10, but I've got a kid thing. Can I be there at 10:30? Like, no, you actually got to be here at 9:30 to make sure we got drum sounds and whatever. And that just is what it is. Fortunately, I have a partner that is willing to cover that. If something comes up, she can take care of that, and we somehow work out a way.
That's good teamwork.
Yeah, it's what it is. Yeah, for sure.
When you realized a daughter, did you panic?
Just because of being a daughter? No, I really wanted a girl.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would have been happy with a boy first as well, but inside I knew I really wanted a girl.
Okay.
And so when I found out it was a girl, it was awesome. And I mean, she and I definitely have a special connection.
Yeah.
It's really sweet. Yeah. I love, I've been this last year and a half, I'm fortunate to have this big gig we'll talk about in a little bit or whatever, But having one of the coolest moments was having her on the side of the stage singing it, because she's so into it, and she sings along with the songs, and just seeing her look at such a big crowd and like kind of take it all in was kind of a cool experience.
Some of the biggest crowds ever, probably.
Yeah,
as well.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remind me who you were playing with before you got this gig.
Nobody.
Oh.
I mean, I've played with Jewel over the years. I played on a record for Jewel years ago, and then nothing to do with that at all. I got called to do a gig for her at some point, maybe 2016-ish or something like that, and then kept doing gigs for her, and I've done a few of her Christmas tours and stuff. She's awesome. She's such a great artist to work for. Super easygoing. Sometimes artists are not so easygoing. There's a definite split between like the artist realm or the artist perception and sort of everybody else's perception. And to find artists that you can actually have a conversation with and get along with and text randomly or whatever, it's few and far between. And I happen to be around two of them, fairly frequently, which is great, and so Jewel is, I still go play with her. I did a gig with her 2-3 months ago or whatever, a weekend with her. So, it's always fun, and I'm always there for it. So, but before this Chesney gig, which is what I'm doing now. Surprise! I hadn't actually done any real touring other than the Jewel thing for a decade. Yeah, because I've been, the session stuff has been going really well, and I'll go and do weekends here and there with people or whatever, but nothing more than that.
How did the Kenny Chesney thing come about?
I know pretty much, I have known pretty much everybody in his band for kind of a long time, just from the Nashville scene. Pretty much everybody plays on sessions and stuff. And so when that position became available, I got a call from John, the guitar player, and
is that the band leader?
No, no, but everybody. Wyatt is the band leader, and Wyatt had said to everybody, "Hey, put down 2 or 3 guys or girls, whatever, that you feel like would be good fits for this band." I found out afterwards that I had ended up on everybody's list, which is very sweet, which is awesome. And so John had called me and said, "Hey," well, it's funny. He called me and left a message, and I thought it was about playing on his daughter. It was something to do with his daughter, because Savannah Conley is his daughter, great artist, and I played on her first record a long time ago. So, and it was right around Christmas of whenever that was, 21, and I was kind of forgetful and slow, and I just never got back to him. And I think he called me back like a week later or something. I was like, "Hey, man." And I saw his name come out. I was like, "Oh, shit, I forgot to call John back." So
that was in the heat of pandemic times, too.
It was the heat of pandemic, yeah. And so everything was kind of slow and whatever. It wasn't... Anyway, I pick up, and he mentions that would I be interested in the gig? And honestly, I didn't know Kenny. I didn't know what his vibe was. The only thing I knew is that, yes, he was very successful and a guy in a hat singing country songs, and that's not necessarily my vibe. So although I was interested just to see what it was, it wasn't like I was chomping at the bit to get it. Another close friend of mine, Kenny Greenberg, who's a big session player in Nashville, has been doing that gig for a long time, the Chesney gig. So I called him, and we had a long conversation about it, and he kind of told me the ins and outs. And now I was starting to get a little more interested in it. And then I found out there had to be auditions, which I wasn't overly psyched about, but I was like, I understand. Chesney's only ever really had one drummer for his whole live career.
And he started young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
He's one of the most successful of the country, and maybe all musicians everywhere.
Kenny?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't know these stats about Kenny, but there's no one that has played more stadium shows in the United States than Kenny Chesney. And when you think about that...
At a stadium.
Yeah, and think about, like, when I say nobody, it's like not in country, but period.
Yeah.
Like the Stones.
That's a big deal.
Any artist.
Yeah.
And... yeah, so anyway, I go down the road. I do the auditions begrudgingly. Ashley was very much the one behind me that said, just do the audition. Don't be all snobbish about it and whatever. Ego, whatever. And I'm happy I did, because when I look back on that, and it hasn't even been 2 years, I mean, with all that going on, I couldn't have been more mistaken, or naive, I should say, about what the Chesney camp was all about. It's an absolute beautiful group of people, family, absolute family.
Excellent work ethic.
Incredible work ethic.
Yeah.
And Kenny is another artist that I could text right now, and he'll probably text me back within 5 minutes, and he's just that dude. He's become a real friend, you know, and that's incredibly rare when it comes to artists that you work with, particularly on that level, you know.
He probably would not remember this, but I accidentally texted Kenny Chesney when I first lived in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
Years and years and years ago, because I was doing work for Skip Ewing, who, of course, wrote a bunch of songs for Kenny and with Kenny.
Yeah.
And so I kept track of Skip's phone. You know, it was basically my phone had all of Skip's contacts, so that if I had to arrange for him to have a co-write or whatever. And it was the day after my birthday, and my friends, we had gone to Lime. Do you remember Lime?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And long gone, but they took me out for quite the birthday. And the next day I was sitting in Frothy Monkey, and I was sending a text to everybody to thank them for coming out and, you know, whatever. And everyone's like, yeah, great. And then I get this random happy birthday, who is this?
Oh, that's awesome.
And it turned out to be Kenny Chesney.
That's amazing.
But that interaction actually is the basis for a film I'm writing.
Oh, yeah?
It's pretty hilarious.
Awesome.
That was how it started.
Who's going to play Kenny? I got to know.
Well, it's a different character, but it's a text
about that
sent.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But which is pretty funny. I'm sure he was very gracious about this random stranger. And I didn't abuse the power either.
That's
obviously,
which is important.
It's pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How often do you go out on tour?
So I started with them at the beginning of last year, 22, and we did like a mid-April to end of August across the country stadium tour. And then this year, and so then we were down at the end of August. And then this year we went out and did a little spring tour that was, I don't know, 25 dates or something from middle of March till end of May. And then we did some weekends and stuff, like some Saturday night festival kind of things or whatever, but that was it. I mean, so we've been off for a little while, and then next year will be, rumor has it, I should say, will be another big sort of run across the stadium tour thing again. But even that, I mean,
got to fill all Jimmy Buffett's shows now.
I know. Well,
they don't have a leader. They're leaderless.
I know.
They're gonna have to convert to becoming the Kenny Chesney.
It's like it sucks that icon.
I was so sad. I played his music all day.
Yeah. Oh gosh, terrible.
Because it's so rooted in memories that I had as a kid.
That's right.
And my big brother and his friends all playing guitar and playing those songs, and it's such a. Yeah, it was sad.
It's sad, yeah. So that's. But even then, I mean, I think I'm pretty fortunate because on a busy year we'll do 45 dates, and I got to say, like, I would not have thought about myself, when the session thing first took off. I love the idea of doing live and recording and doing. I like playing drums. I like making music with people, whether it's in the recording world, in the way that's done. I love the relationship that happens on stage too. It's beautiful. And this band right now, the Kenny Band, is just, I mean, stellar musicians. And
are these the biggest audiences that you've ever?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've maybe done a festival in the past where we were playing for 100,000 people or something like that, but never on a constant where like every stadium we get to is, if it's not sold out, it's really close, and it's a whole lot of people.
And everyone knows every word.
Everyone knows every word. Everybody's singing along. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, and the fact that guy commands that and has done for however many years, it's incredible.
Yeah, in my mind, I think of Taylor Swift as being a marketing genius. She's always had such an excellent head for business from really the get-go. And I have friends who have played on her early stuff, like the demos. Oh, you did too?
I mean, I played on all those first records.
Oh, you did? Okay. And the word on the street was that she always knew exactly who she was, what her sound was, what she wanted, and could command that in a room.
I'll say, so I was, the beginnings of recording, to jump back for a second, I met a guy named Nathan Chapman who ended up being her producer. But at the time, he was doing basement demos and had met me because again, at the beginning, I just wanted to get into recording. So I bought a very starter recording rig, super amateur, set up mics in a room, and that was it. But he liked the vibe, and so we started working together. And then he started doing more and more demos. And one of those demos ended up being, with Liz Rose, who co-wrote some of those early Taylor hits. And so she brought Taylor in to demo one of these songs. And Taylor really loved the vibe that we had. And that's how the beginnings of her first record started. She had already started a record with another much more well-known Nashville producer, but really liked the way Nathan worked and really liked we just recorded everything small band. Me and Tim Marks was playing bass, Chad Carlson was engineering, and Nathan, and that was it. And then Nathan would play everything else afterwards, like build up the track. And so that's how her first record came together. And because that record did so well and because she loved it so much, the exact same thing happened for the second record as well. We went in and did Fearless that way too. And then, and the story I was getting to was that I remember even on that first record, working on a song, going through the song, and we'd get done with a take. And in my mind, I would think like, well, I wonder how she's going to think about this. I know that I think we could do one better one, but if she likes it, she likes it. And we didn't. These were almost demos. I mean, we knew that we were supposedly going to be making a record. Nobody thought anything was going to happen beyond what we were doing right there. As 15-year-old artist, brand new label,
took a chance on people. They brought Taylor around, and people wouldn't write with her because she was young, and they're like, "Oh, who's this kid?"
That's right.
they're kicking themselves.
It's really incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think she got turned down by just about every label in town. You know, it's really phenomenal.
Classic story.
Yeah, and I remember after a take like that, Taylor would be the one be like, yeah, I liked it, but I think we got a better one. And she was 15. Mm-hmm. And I gave
commanding adult, mostly men, in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So at that age, even I knew that, like, wow, she's really got something. Yeah. And then I was, hey, you know what? I was just thankful to be a part of. I ended up doing the first 4 records with her, and now my daughter is so all over Taylor. I mean, we cannot be in the car without her wanting to listen to it. I think we've moved past the same 4 songs, but pretty much any. She was like, okay, well, you can pick whichever one as long as it's on a Taylor record. So it's so we listen to a lot of Taylor Swift now. But it is sweet because when I was recording those records a long time ago, I could not have imagined my daughter singing along to them, so that's kind of neat.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Well, what I was going to say is that from an early age, she had a very good understanding of marketing and who she was and what she wanted. Completely. And I think that Kenny Chesney also had that in him, the genius as far as marketing and what he wanted and what his vision was, and stayed the course regardless.
I think they both have. They both have been able to move with their careers and continually go to the next stage before the career even gets there. Mm-hmm. Kenny is so, like, I don't know. I know the only things I know about Taylor's world are through friends I know that are still working with her. But I see Kenny showing up to make sure that the lighting is exactly what it needs to be. It's like, well, I like this shade of orange when we go to this part of the song, or this video needs to be this when we go to this thing. He is a part of every piece of the show that we do, even when he's in the song and he's killing it out there running around and singing, he's still paying attention to all the stuff that's happening around him. I don't know how he does it. It's incredible.
They're just next level.
Really are.
They're next level. And I think back again to Taylor in that when she wanted to shift out of being country and go into a more pop sound, and everyone's like, you're going to kill your career, everything.
That's right.
But to her credit, she stayed her course, right? She could have been like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I'm going to listen to these other people who supposedly know more than I do. But she blazed her own trail.
But you know what? She always has. Yeah. I mean, the thing that happened at the very beginning of her career, so she got, didn't get signed by any other label in town. Scott Borchetta got,
with her dad,
did a deal, and then they started recording this record, and then Taylor met Nathan, and like that, and Scott was like, well, yeah, but we're already recording this thing, and she said, no, I don't want to do that anymore. And I mean, what artist not even gets to, but has the whatever inner
the metal.
thing.
I call that metal.
It is
METTLE.
Yeah, to just say nope, this is not working for me. This is better.
Yeah.
And I want to do this.
Yeah.
And she was absolutely right.
And she worked on her craft. Oh, I think when she started, she was a kid, right? Her voice wasn't really mature yet.
Yeah, she was figuring it out.
Yeah, she was figuring it out. And that not only... I'm glad that the world gave the patience for it, but that she gave herself the patience, because a lot of us don't have that, right? We don't. We kind of like, I can't get from suck to really great in a quick enough time.
Yeah.
I'm abandoning ship.
It's almost like she had no doubt that even if she could take the criticism and have no doubt that she would get there.
That takes a special person.
It does. And she did all the things along the way. I remember, I think when we were doing the Fearless record, or maybe it was the one after that, I can't remember, when CMA Fest was happening right in the midst of while we were recording. And one of the days she went to the stadium. They had somehow gotten the use of the stadium, and they parked her bus in the middle of the stadium, and she stayed there for like 5 hours or something, signing autographs. She didn't like play or anything, but people could come in and it was packed, and she just sat there and talked to everybody and signed all the autographs and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, because regardless, she also knows that without those fans, who, by the way, would take a bullet for her.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, I know.
I don't know if Kenny's fans are as intense, but
I mean, some of them are pretty intense, but I don't know. I think the Taylor thing has definitely gone to another level.
That's next level.
Yeah.
Next level.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, we had tacos in LA a year ago. Your mom's husband, creator of
Jim Stalin, creator of Thanos. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing because as we are both artists doing the thing, he spent his life being perfectly popular and well known in that artist community, having worked for DC and Marvel over the years, created Thanos many years ago.
What a character.
Yeah, and had been in that realm, and then all of a sudden these Avengers movies just took off. Well, the Marvel movies in general, right, just completely took off, being the biggest grossing movies out there, before Barbie, of course. But
yay, Barbie!
and so all of a sudden Jim became a superstar because Thanos was such a huge thing. It was just interesting to see how his world changed from, and like I said, being perfectly fine and doing well, doing his thing, to being, the guy, for the last, quite a few years now. This has been a big thing. So
Thanos is a big deal.
It's a really big deal. Yeah, which is really awesome.
Was he pleased? Do you know if how they did the movies?
Oh yeah. No. He really, and in fact, I think he even played he was a little role in one of the movies, because they liked doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, Stanley is always.
Stanley's always doing that thing too. That's right.
Rest his soul.
Yeah.
Thanos became not only a bad guy, but in a way an anti-hero.
Completely. Yeah. No, I think he was. I mean, obviously he was happy with how it was portrayed, and then of course that led to all kinds of other opportunities too, which I'm not exactly sure what's going on at the moment, but I do know that his life changed big time as a result of that, And it's cool. It is cool to see that. You could say like, oh my gosh, I've been doing this a long time, and here I am turning this age, whatever it is, and like, is anything even going to happen with blah blah blah? And in this, particularly in the arts careers as they are, anything, as long as you're putting yourself out there, working at it, trying to do the thing that you love, whatever that is, to the purest of your whatever. I think you stray too far from the course, and you may not be doing yourself the best service in what it is that you're actually after. I think that Jim was good at keeping on what he wanted to do, and this may not have ever happened. The whole Marvel crazy movie success, that if that hadn't exploded like it did, then Thanos may have been in a movie, and it might have been a midline grossing movie, and that might have just been whatever. It just so happens that style of movie became the biggest movies out there. His character was in there, and that meant that as an artist, his status we went through the roof, so
we don't know.
Awesome.
We don't know which doors are going to open. We have no idea.
Absolutely.
We have no idea.
The way these things come around, there's just you just can't plan for it. It's not the thing you can say, well, if I do this and I do this, then I'm guiding myself down this road and then I could possibly meet this person. It doesn't really work like that in this world. And there've been plenty of times that I've done gigs in scenarios where I knew that either some other big person was going to be there or it would potentially lead to blah, 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 and I almost never did. If I thought about it, it almost never did. The things that did lead to those next things came out of nowhere.
And just showing up to your life.
That's right. Oh, yeah, no, I was still doing what I do because I love doing it. There was never a question about that. I remember I worked with a producer a few years ago, a big legendary producer in Nashville, has been there forever. And I remember him telling a story in the studio about an artist that he brought to Nashville to record. And I somehow got on to talking about what was your what's your backup plan? If music doesn't happen. And he was like, I never had a backup plan. I never thought about anything else. And that's the first time even that I'd even thought about backup plan. I never had a backup plan either. Somehow music was going to work. I didn't necessarily know how. I made decisions based on where I felt like I wanted to go based upon careers of other drummers that I heavily admired, maybe, or just what I felt like I liked. I know that I'm not the kind of drummer that could just tour with an artist and just be out doing that thing unless it was really the thing or I was an instrumental part of what the whole was. I just didn't take those things. I've been fortunate enough to say, nope, I don't want to do that, and I'm just not going to do it.
Obviously, you know how to adjust your drumming to fit whatever music you're playing, but do drummers have? I always wondered this. Do drummers have a fingerprint? Like a style that's really uniquely their own? Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think the ones, I think the ones that think about having a voice, I don't think every musician necessarily thinks about that. Yeah, maybe you don't have to think about it to have it, but I do think that I think it's an important thing. I think too many people get thrown into you play drums, I need drums on this, you'll be the drummer on this, and that's what that thing is. And that's fine. It's making a career, you're earning money, but you're not getting called for you necessarily. You're getting called because you can provide this service. And although that's part of it, for me, it means so much more when I'm the person they want because of the thing that I do, and that's it. And therefore, if I can't do the session, sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and they'll go with somebody else, and that's fine. But the best compliments I can get is when I get when can you do it? Because we want to have you on it. That to me is like, well, you've just shot to the top of the list. I've been very fortunate since meeting Mr. Chesney. Now I'm playing on his records as well, and some of the biggest. It's just so complimentary to me that he feels like I need to be there for him to do this thing. Because how much value is that in your art that you're bringing when somebody else can say, no, I want you for this thing? That to me is that's the goal.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be like that, but boy, it's great when it is.
It makes up for all the drumming jokes you've heard over your lifetime.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, boy, and there's a lot.
There are so many.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's I feel like there's a line between we do this as a career, but we do this out of love, and somehow you got to find where all that meets.
I've often said that it takes a little bit of insanity too.
Completely.
Because this is not an easy road. There are way more pitfalls than there are shiny golden apples hanging from trees. So you have to really, again, that metal, define it in yourself to keep going. It's freaking hard.
It's hard. There's a lot of gut punches. And, social media hasn't made it any easier, Maybe one of the things that it hopefully forces you to do is believe in the thing that you do. So that even when you're not getting called for the thing, the thing that social media does is, and I know everybody feels this way, is you see the thing that happened that you weren't called for, and you're like, what the, but I did that for this person before, and they loved everything about it. Now they didn't call me for this next thing, and now I'm seeing it. If I just had not known about it, it wouldn't have mattered, but now I know. So, and it hurts. So, and that, I don't think that never goes away, but what I think can help digest that pain is knowing that you have a thing that people do love and do call you for, and you can't account for everybody's actions or why their choices, their decisions, why they decided to go with whoever they did on whatever. I mean, it's not, at no point do I really feel it was like, I should call Nick for, no, I'm not going to call Nick, because, I don't feel like that's normally a part of the scenario. It's more just like, I saw this guy, I'm going to call this guy. And that's what happens,
Sure.
It's almost like that dog, like squirrel.
Also, the thing about Nashville, and maybe it's everywhere, is if you're not in someone's immediate vision, it's not that they're forgetting, but it's like you don't exist because they're worried about their own stuff. And
Completely.
So if you're not in front of them,
everybody's got their own things they're trying to fight through and make happen, get out there, whatever the thing is, And it's not to say that you then happen to run into them at the wherever restaurant, market, blah blah blah, whatever, and then you happen to get a call like a week later or something. It's happened, that kind of thing. Are you fine?
I keep hitting your foot.
You happen to, that's all it takes is. And that's the whole thing. Like, it takes being out there. It takes doing the things. Not because you feel like the thing is going to lead to the next thing, because you love doing the thing. That's why you do it. You continue to do it because you love it. And then as a result of that, at some points, it leads to the next thing, Mm-hmm. But you can't account for it. You just have to keep doing it. And if you don't love it, then just don't keep doing it. Do something. Way better to do something else. And nothing wrong with. I know plenty of people that have left. I mean, geez, over COVID, when it was just like, well, struggling along, or even just gotten to a point where it's like, I don't know that I love this as much anymore. COVID was the great equalizer. I'm just going to wipe everything off the table. Now, if you still love it, keep going. But this is a great time to think about doing something else if that's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't blame anybody for saying, I don't want to do this anymore.
I've had so many friends quit, and I said, tell me your secret.
Yeah.
Because it's, I wouldn't say it's quite, addiction isn't the right word, but there's just something that's in me that I can't not do it.
That's right. I feel the same way.
Yeah. And I can't even I can't articulate what that is, or you can't explain it to the civilians. They don't understand.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
why?
You're absolutely right.
Why?
That's right. I do think it is a little bit of an addiction, but it's not a negative addiction. I think that there is, listen, I think it would be negative if I hadn't really done anything playing drums. I just knew I loved playing drums, and I was in debt and in whatever, and it just wasn't doing anything. And there is a life responsibility point of, okay, maybe this is not what I do as my thing, even if I love playing, and then you move into doing something else. I have been super fortunate, and I do think, yes, it's hard work, but I love doing it, so it doesn't seem as hard work, but I have constantly worked on my craft. But I've also been very fortunate to have been in those positions, maybe because I've put myself there, maybe because I had no problem making that call when it needed to be made, or making that decision to do something different when that needed to be done. Even at times where I thought like, okay, well, the Taylor thing was huge. This is going to be a tough shadow to work out of, out from, I should say, because it's so huge. Like, obviously she's so huge now, but even on the Fearless record, by the time that, like, the first record was big, the second record was really, really big, and then it just went from there. And I didn't want to have my career defined by playing on those Taylor records. Like, I am a drummer that, or I should say, debatable musician. No, I'm a drummer that loves playing on all different kinds of music. And the last thing I wanted was like, oh, that's the guy that played on the Taylor records. Like, yeah, but I'm also the guy that can do all this other stuff. Like, when I'm playing with Kenny now live, it's not at all the kind of stuff that's on the Taylor record.
But I think even Taylor would say she's not the Taylor that she was and
absolutely
give her the opportunity to be all the Taylor she wants to be.
Thank goodness
Nick, give Nick all the opportunities to be all the Nicks that you have in you.
That's
and same with Kenny and anyone who's.
I think it's a lot harder with musicians though, because we don't often get the opportunity to have all the stuff that we are always out there at the top of the listening public. You know what I mean? Taylor, if she wants to do the folklore record, or then she wants to do another pop record, whatever it is being heard by all the millions of her fans all the time. So the fact that she gets to be all those things is awesome for her, but also much easier for everybody else to see.
Sure.
There's certain things that I love to do musically that aren't going to be the thing that most people see. So therefore, if there's anybody that's saying, oh yeah, Nick's that guy that played on those records, you know. The one cool thing about the Kenny thing now is that it's like, okay, yeah, but now you see there's this other big guy that I'm doing a completely different thing for, you know. Like the concerts are as big rock as any show I've played. I'm hitting harder than any other time live that I've played with anybody, and I've played with some pretty heavy rock bands. Kenny stuff is like my hands are shredded and I'm exhausted. It's huge. It's really, really fun.
Yeah.
That's part of what I love about it is the.
It's like Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is a pretty rockin' show. Right?
He is. I mean, he is. But I don't know that
it's rockin'
it holds
a
candle to Kenny
really?
on that level. We are. I mean, 3 electrics up front, big rock. And I mean, I part of the challenge for me is the physical challenge. You know. Getting older, I'm just like I have to kind of keep it together and work up to that stamina for those shows because
the endurance needed to be a drummer.
It's a thing, you know, and playing gigs around town or even sessions doesn't require nearly the same sort of thing. But that's what's part of the super fun part of it.
Just cue to a picture of you dressed like Rocky, and instead of hitting the sides of beef, you're just drumming on them.
The sides, that would be awesome. See me training in like a meat locker with I should do that. That'd be a great little video shoot.
That would be hilarious.
Like with a headband on.
Exactly, the whole outfit. Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell people how they may find you.
Instagram is the easiest way. Just my name, Nick Buda, and there's a silly little picture of me, I think. Honestly, that's the easiest. I don't really look at Facebook that much, except for Marketplace. So if you have something to sell, sure. And then, obviously, if I'm playing somewhere, come say hi.
Of course. And you so Nick Buda, that's Buda.
Buda, yeah. And my email is easy, too. It's just nick@nickbuda.com if anybody wants to email me.
So you have a website, too.
I do have a website. I will say it is old, and you know what? This fall, it is getting updated. Okay. I'm the worst at that stuff, because it's like I want it to be up to date, and I want it to have all this stuff, but I don't care as much as I should about keeping all that information up there. That's why Instagram is so easy for me, is because it's like I can have a picture, I can post it, it's fine, blah blah blah. I'm not as savvy about it. My care is not at the place of making sure that everything's online as it should be. And maybe it's my age, or maybe it's just me just not being that kind of person. I'm not the most self-haranguing character, but
that's okay.
But I like meeting people.
You're a drummer.
If anybody came up to a show and said, I heard the interview on the Hey Human thing with Susan, blah, 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 I think that's awesome. Whenever somebody comes up with a reference, I'm like, oh, that's so cool that you heard this thing, because, that would be awesome.
That would be cool. You'll have to let me know.
I would.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm so... I think it's great. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I'm so glad that you have all these really wonderful... I've known you a long time now.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
I can't even think about how many years.
Yeah, long time. So it's great. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so... Honestly, when you asked me to do this, I love this podcast. I love that it's not based on a specific... like a music focus or drum focus. It's a person focus, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
really cool. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye. That was great.
Awesome.
You're the best. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.